Hey, welcome back to 2SkeGEEKS. And we've got a great guest. But before I go into the guest, as you can already see his face on there, so you can begin to rumble on through and figure out what the names are. But I'm Will Call. I got my partner in crime. Go ahead, John.
John Michael here. Yeah,
And
Will Call and I met in college. We pledged together. Crazy thing. William and I, we were pledging Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated in the fall of 1988. And we went through college and finished college, and we didn't know each other collected comics. I guess we had so much on our mind with pledging and studies. We didn't find out that we collected comic books until after college. That was crazy.
almost 10 years later.
Yeah.
Then we've got another friend of ours, of mine, I should say, but I'll introduce him. His name is James Barnes. James is one of the guys at the local comic shop, so I'll let James introduce himself a little bit.
Hey, I'm James Barnes, and I'm originally from Florida. Huge comic geek, and well, geek fanboy that is. And I collect a lot of comics, and big fan of Phil's. Phillip, I'm sorry, and love his action comics. And yeah, me and Will, we've met each other over there, Flashback, and well, Painted Visions, really. And been friends ever since.
Okay. And while I'm having technical difficulties, ignore that. But the main guest of honor is who we have here, Mr. Phillip Kennedy Johnson, as I come back on. But Mr. Johnson, Mr. Phillip Kennedy Johnson, please introduce yourself. And because man, you've done so much for comics that it's just crazy. And it's an honor for us to have you with us today. And I've got the daggone wrong camera. This is just great. But anyway, please introduce yourself while I'm doing my technical difficulty.
Yeah, no worries, Will. I'm Phillip. It's great to meet all you guys. Thanks everyone for watching, listening. I currently write action comics at DC. I write Alien at Marvel. I'm writing 007 Dynamite, and just signed a contract for a new creator-owned book coming out soon. Hopefully we'll announce very soon. And yeah, I've been writing comics for, let's see, my first published book was in 2015. Started out doing stuff at Boom Studios, who I will be with again soon. And now primarily at DC and Marvel. So it's an honor to be here.
Awesome.
Very good. Very good. I guess while he's getting his video together, is it okay to call you Phil or Phillip? What do you prefer?
Yeah, Phillip usually, but
okay.
Whatever, though.
Yeah, okay, Phillip. What got you into writing? How did you know you wanted to write? What got you down that path?
Actually, I got a younger brother who lives down your way. Actually, he lives in Atlanta as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my brother Bill, he's an artist. When he got out of school, he wanted to do comic art, but didn't really know how to get started. Both of us kind of lived out in the country, didn't really know much about how comics were made. I was not really reading comics at the time. I had gotten a job with the U.S. Army Field Band. It's one of the military bands in the Washington, D.C. area where I am still. And he was going to community college and doing okay, but wasn't really digging it and just didn't know what to do. And we were talking about it, and I just convinced him to come move in with me and said we would find a good shop. We would go to conventions. We would just, buy books on how comics are made. We'll troll Artist Alley, talk to whoever will talk to us, and just kind of figure it out, So I started writing scripts just for him to illustrate, so he would have some kind of portfolio. It was strictly just for practice for him, but it was really fun. And I just kind of got the bug, So when we were talking to artists and writers and editors and publishers and everyone else, I just really got sucked into that world and started looking for other people to work with. And it worked out. One of those pitches that I put together became Last Sons of America at Boom Studios, and that led to another book at Boom, and those books got noticed elsewhere, and here we are.
Were you in your 20s then when the bug bit, or?
No, it would have been 30s, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. probably, it's hard to say when exactly that was. I think maybe 2008 maybe is when this started when I started, I think my brother moved with me around that time. And then we started getting, yeah, I think that's when we started working on projects. It was around 2008. And then
Okay.
2010, some stuff happened with, that's when there was a big humanitarian crisis in Haiti. There was a
Okay.
big earthquake
remember
down
that.
there. Yeah.
I recall that.
And that kind of led to, well, that's when I started learning a lot more about the for-profit adoption industry. I was already doing some anti-human trafficking work in Baltimore. And that's when I started learning more about the adoption industry worldwide. And I kind of had this high concept sci-fi genre thing about a world in which Americans can't have kids anymore. And that was 2010. I think 2011 is when I started figuring out ideas for a story that kind of drew upon that. And yeah, so that's kind of how it all got rolling.
Wow. Yeah. So sometimes you don't know where a path will take you, because you mentioned a lot of key factors there that you couldn't control, but it led you to writing. You said the bug, that you were bitten by the bug. You know what? That's an interesting term, because people who collect comic books, other than a lot of the speculation that's going on today, like I'll tell you, the bug bit me, and this was in the 1970s. I had moved from the city of Miami to North Miami Beach, and there was a kid that lived across the street. And so we were just tossing the ball around in the street. He said, "Hey, you want to see my comic books?" Well, I really didn't know what they were at the time. I knew that my elementary seat was in front of this thing called the SRA Reading Lab. I'm dating myself because you may not even be familiar with that. SRA reading labs were used from the 70s and 80s for, help kids with their reading. Well, there was different color cards in this lab, and I would just mow through those cards. I loved reading. You would read the story on the front. It had one picture, and then you'd flip the card over, and there would be a series of questions. Well, the higher you got in your reading, it went through different colors. And so my seat in the elementary classroom in Miami, Florida was in front of that lab. Oh, I love reading those cards. So when I moved to North Miami, this kid, "Hey, you want to see my comic books?" I was like, "Sure, but I don't know what those are." I was, 9 years old. So he takes me into his room, and he pulls out his top drawers were his clothes, but the one long bottom drawer, he pulls out the one long bottom drawer, it was only Superman and Action Comics.
Oh, that's cool.
And that's all. But back then, Philip, there were no bags and boards weren't really invented yet. And then when they did come about, there were these thin cellophane bags. The cardboard was cheap. It was like something that would be from a box where you'd ship a hat or ship a shirt in. It was very cheap cardboard.
Right.
And so anyway, I remember the very first book I read was Action Comics 436. It was the case of the superpowered stogies. These aliens crashed. Perry White, editor of the Daily Planet.
I know you're talking about.
Yeah, he stumbles upon these aliens, but they could read his mind. They read his mind where he wanted to be like Superman. He wished he could do what Superman did.
Right.
So they gave him a box of stogies, cigars. And when he would smoke one of those cigars, he'd get the powers of Superman. So he tried to go out and do some of the things that Superman did, but he was very clumsy at it.
Oh, was he high?
For instance, he would try to.
Right. When he hits on the stogie, yeah.
He would try to catch a falling plane, and the wing would snap off. But the gist of the story, Superman was moving behind him at an invisible speed, doing all of the feats so he wouldn't feel bad. And so at the end of the story, it shows Superman sitting on the side of a building, blowing a puff of air. Phew, I'm glad that's over. And then it switches to another scene. Perry White is sitting at his desk, And he says, "Oh, gee, I'm all out of cigars." You know, that's how those stories were back then.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But that guy, his name was Steven. He introduced me to comics. His brother actually went on to become the dentist of Don Shula, who was the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. You know, of course, the only perfect season in NFL history. So yeah, his brother went on to become the dentist of Don Shula. But anyway, yeah.
Hey,
That's cool.
hey, Philip, let me ask you some questions as well. What was your first gig at DC? Was it the DC Showcase 2018, or what was the first gig?
No, it was maybe it came out, you know, actually it might have come around, it might have come out around that same time, but my introduction to DC happened because of my first boom book, Last Sons of America, that got read by the Justice League editor at the time, Brian Cunningham.
Okay.
And he reached out just out of the blue. He's like, "Hey, I'm Brian Cunningham. Would you want to do something to DC?" And I was like, "Hell yeah." And,
Yeah.
so we talked about
Let me see if I can
what
adjust this
what
light.
books he was editing at the time, and he gave me a bunch of, let's see, so he asked me if I wanted to do an inventory issue. And for those who don't know, we're listening, there's a
I do not.
okay, so you guys, so at DC they do inventory issues, and that's when, so they need a Batman issue on the shelf every month, right?
Right.
So if the creative team falls behind, if there's some kind of a crazy family crisis that derails I mean, comics are coming out so quick all the time, and it's so hard to make them. Every book on the shelf is like one migraine away from not existing. So
Yeah.
they've got to have a book on the shelf no matter what. So what they have is these inventory issues that are in the can, ready to go if they need to print off a fill-in issue, basically.
Okay.
I don't think those get used very often, but they're there if they ever need to be there.
Oh, good.
So let's see, and that's also a good way to try people out, try out new talent.
Right.
So they asked me to do something like that, and he said, "Okay, I edit Flash, Aquaman, Hellblazer." What else did he say? I want to say, I can't remember if he was doing the Green Lantern stuff at the time, or if the Green Lanterns had their own, like, you know, their own editorial like shop.
Okay.
But listed off a bunch of books, and I was like, Hellblazer all day. Like, I know Hellblazer super well. I would crush that shit. And
Right.
they were like, he said, "Actually, what I really need is Aquaman."
That's where it
You
came.
did Aquaman.
Yeah, I was like, "I don't know why you asked me then, but yeah, I'll do it." It's like a test, I guess. But anyway, so yeah, I was happy to do it. And I wrote they wanted either a 1 or a 2 issue Aquaman story. So I wrote a 2-issue Aquaman thing that ended up being used as the Aquaman Annual 2018. But I wrote it, like we finished it, I want to say the previous year. I don't think it actually got used or read by anyone except DC editors, because they do read the inventories, looking for new people. So
speaking of, I'm sorry to pause you, but I did see, I was going through the collection the other a day or two ago, but looking for books that you've done. But I was going through my Convergence books, and there was your name on the Convergence books for Aquaman. I was like, huh?
oh, yeah, that was my first one right there. I mean, I don't remember if it came out before or after. I think it came out just before. It came out like November, I think, 2018. The 2018 showcase must have, I think it came out like December or January.
Okay.
December 2018 or January 2019, I believe. And that was as a product of the writers workshop that they did, like the writers workshop and the artist workshop. They paired up a new artist and writer. And actually Brian Cunningham reached out to me about the workshop as well. Like, "Hey, have you thought about doing the workshop? It would put you in front of a lot of other editors."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "I can't do it." Like, I'd already looked into the writers workshop, and they needed you. It was a thing where you get on live, like Zoom, basically. Let's see, like 3 hours every Wednesday night for like 13 weeks or something. It's like a 3-month thing. And I had gigs and stuff. I was like, "There's no way I'm going to have, 3 months straight of Wednesdays with no gigs."
Right.
So I was like, I'd have to bail on a class or two. And he's like, "Don't worry about it." Like, they were trying to bring in a couple of heavies for the class, or people who had some like, a little more experience to go with people who they already had found. And it's like, I mean, yeah, if they'll let me get out of one when I need to, I would happily, study comics with Scott Snyder. I mean, shit, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah.
So I put my name in the ring for that, and they picked me. Like and 5 others. It was 6
Right,
of
but
us.
still, yeah, you're
It
in
was, but yeah, it was super cool, and that was actually great, man. I learned a lot from Scott. Scott's a great teacher as well as a great writer, and I was already at that time too. I was all about his writing. I mean, his Batman run was incredible, but
Yeah.
American
Yeah.
Vampire was probably the thing that made me notice him the most.
Yeah.
That book
Really?
was incredible, and he also had put out a book of short stories, like prose short stories, that I really admired. That I'd found after I found his Batman. I found his prose writing. It was so good, man. So he's super legit.
Yes.
And he talked a lot about form, which is not something I really ever thought about much. I mean, I knew it existed in theory, but it's not something I was never really. I didn't know shit about it,
Right.
and I was just kind of writing stories based on stories I had read and watched and everything. But I learned a lot about 3-act structure from Scott and the importance of it and different ways you can use it. And it was, I think about it more now than I did then, for sure. So yeah, that's kind of how I got my in. So the Aquaman thing got me into the writer's workshop, which started getting me in front of more people, and all kind of worked out.
Phil, let me ask you, I've got several questions I want to ask you, but one, I want to ask you a geek question first. Out of your Marvel, you did Marvel Zombies, right?
I did.
So I'm asking, who would win out of them and the DC vampires or deceased? And second, the other question is like, how was it performing at the Moscow ballet?
Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing, the third question is that, like what mixed martial art did you do?
Oh, well, for martial arts, my first martial arts experience was in the Army, actually. Like they did this at the time, they were teaching us this form. Well, at the time, they're still doing it. It's called the combatives.
Combatives, yes, sir.
Yeah. And that was, at the time, it was a relatively new style. They had done hand-to-hand combat before that. And they had kind of decided, I'm told, that they discovered over time that it was not as effective as it in real life as it was intended to be. And so they kind of developed a new form, highly influenced by jiu-jitsu, by Brazilian jiu-jitsu and some other stuff, with some striking involved. And so I did some combatives in basic, having never done any kind of martial arts before, but always having kind of wanted to.
Right.
And then when I got out of basic and started doing my Army gig, I started looking for martial arts studios around, and I did Kempo first.
Okay. And
then combat Hapkido, and both of those were fine. Not throwing shade for anyone listening who does those kind of things. They were totally cool, but they were not as real life applicable as I had hoped. And I was still kind of looking for the right thing. And then my neighbor was a big MMA fan, and he did a UFC pay-per-view around that time and had me over. And it was like, the loving couple finding each other in the daisies, like I was just like, this is exactly what I was looking for. So I just love MMA.
Oh yeah. Who's your favorite?
So say it again?
Who's your favorite MMA
Who's
guy?
my favorite?
Yeah.
Frankie Edgar, I think.
Okay.
Frankie Edgar's a great fighter. I mean, these days he's having a harder time. But back in the day, he was the lightweight. He was the 155 champion.
Right.
And he was always the underdog. Even when he had the belt, he was the underdog for whoever he was fighting. And he was a dude who fought at 155. When everyone else was like,
picking up weight.
Yeah, other people are walking around at 175 and then cutting weight for the fight. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's what everyone does. But Frankie Edgar was fighting at his actual weight, always the smallest guy, and still killing it. And he was just so well-rounded. His striking and his wrestling, he was like a not screwing around wrestler, and just a very, very creative striker, and just had heart for days and cardio for days. Just love that guy.
But that true fighting weight at 155 was probably what gave him the advantage, because he was naturally fast. He didn't have to slow down.
Yeah, he's fresh. He didn't have to worry about gassing out. Yeah, Frankie's great, man. So anyway, So yeah, as far as what I practice, I've done jujitsu and Muay Thai primarily.
Gotcha.
These days I'm like on the bandwidth. I'm still in the Army. And when I get out, when I hit 20, I'm probably going to get out and just focus on writing, I guess. And when I do that, I'll get back in there. I started breaking bones and it was becoming a hassle. I was like, I better take some time off here. I broke my ankle doing Muay Thai and I was just getting hurt too much. But
I know how it is. I used to do martial arts, back in the day myself, but now since my knees are, I wouldn't say I call it up in age, but let's just say I'm getting a little older and my knees, they hurt. So like I was telling Will earlier, they used to call me the oak, but now I'm more like a mulberry bush or something like that right now.
Nice.
So, so.
No, comes for all of us. Yeah, I'm going to get back in there here soon. So you also asked about Moscow Ballet. There's not too much to say there. I just got hired to play. The Moscow Ballet was doing a series of concerts here in the States.
Mm-hmm.
With their own dancers and some of their musicians from Moscow, and they were here for that. And I played in the orchestra for the Nutcracker.
Mm-hmm. Did you like it? I mean,
yeah, it was awesome. I mean, Tchaikovsky is incredible. Like Tchaikovsky's. I mean, everyone knows Nutcracker is great music.
Right.
It's class. I mean, it's people almost kind of like musicians kind of roll their eyes at it. It's like, oh my God, it's a friggin' Nutcracker again. Because it's something that you do every year if you want to, if the gigs are there. It's just this thing. It's like the music you play at Easter or whatever, like this stuff that comes up all the time. You're like, oh, Christmas music, it's that time.
That's correct. Nutcracker again.
Yeah. But I don't feel that way about it. I really love Nutcracker. It's a beautiful piece. So anyway, yeah, it's great. What was your first question again?
The Marvel zombies. Just I had to throw in that geek question. I mean, like who would win out
who
of the
would
Marvel
win?
zombies in the deceased?
Honestly, the way that we portrayed it, the way that we portrayed them in the book, if there was a straight throwdown between Marvel zombies and the deceased guys, I'd have to go deceased. They're still portrayed more or less as the deceased zombies are portrayed more or less like themselves as far as power set. They're still pretty durable, just like they were when they were alive. Whereas in the Marvel zombies universe, they're all kind of falling apart, and so like everybody's a little more brittle. Mm-hmm. But in fact, that became part of it. Like when they asked me to do Marvel Zombies Resurrection, that was right when Kirkman had announced kind of on the sly that Walking Dead was going to end.
Okay.
And Marvel was like, holy crap, he just announced that Walking Dead's over. We got to do something to make money off it. So they're like, let's do a Marvel Zombies like reboot. So they did that, and they're like, do you want to write it? And I had not done much Marvel at all. I think I had done like one 10-page short. I think that was all I'd done. And they asked me to do it. I was like, I mean, yeah, if you guys want me to. I was like, I'm not going to say no. I was surprised they gave me the keys to it. Mm-hmm. But honestly, they struck gold and didn't know it. I love horror stuff. And I did say, however, I do not like the original series much. And I was like, do you mind if I do it way different than the other one? Because the first one was real campy and it's just kind of a fun, silly zombie romp where like they're kind of cracking jokes and stuff.
Yeah, I read it and I actually enjoyed that first arc. I know it got rather long. They kept doing more iterations of it.
Sure.
But yeah, there were some jokes in it that really that got me. So, but yeah, I know what you're saying about that. Yeah, it was more fun and campy, and that part
this wasn't for me. It was just like, what if your favorite superheroes are zombies? It's like Hulk's eating somebody and then it pops out of his guts. He's like, oh no, like I don't know.
And the Black Panther was walking around with the Wasp's head.
Right. Yeah, Black Panther was one of the survivors, right?
Right.
Like he was yeah, they got him and he got like cybernetic legs or something, and he was one of the crew. Anyway,
he was on crutches.
Right. Yeah, dude. Yeah. So it wasn't for me. So I was like, I have this totally different take I would do.
Okay,
like,
right.
What I wanted to do is more like Cormac McCarthy's The Road, set in this post-apocalyptic Marvel universe. And they were like, cool, do it. Let's just get it out the door. So I did it, and it was mad dark. It's like a super dark take. It takes the zombie stuff much more seriously. Mm-hmm. And you see like a little group of survivors on Earth after the zombie apocalypse has kind of happened. And you see them, and it's really dark and honestly not that like fun per se, like,
Right.
it's fun. But one of the ways that I tried to try to keep them more visually interesting and fun, like more comic-y and not so depressing, was Forge was one of the survivors, at least
Right.
for a bit. And he had taken a lot of the body parts of fallen X-Men and kind of reused them as elements of weapons that he had built.
Right.
So he had like a rifle with Cyclops's, top part of Cyclops's head on the front.
Right.
Yeah.
There was this big glove thing that incorporated part of Gambit's hand that could like touch things and blow it up. And so yeah, anyway, they blow apart kind of easy in that world. So I guess I'd say deceased. But I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of that Resurrection book though. That turned out good. And the art turned out great. And
Yeah. Oh yeah. The art was phenomenal. And yeah,
yeah,
the
Leonard
things you
Kirk did the
mentioned
art
were
and crushed
very,
it.
yeah, they were
Is
very
that the reason why
creative.
you got into Aliens?
Say it again, I'm sorry.
Is that the reason why you got into Aliens, since you're a horror fan? Because dude, that book, I couldn't believe I was getting into that book. I told my wife and some of the other guys at the comic, I was like, I can't believe I'm getting into a xenophobe book. And dude, it was hard to put down. It was really, really good.
Thank you, man.
Awesome, man. It was one of my favorite books. I could, especially the cat, man. The cat. I love the cat. It was in the ship. I love the cat. And I'm telling you, dude, it was a really good book. You had me hugged. I mean, you had me hugged. It was great.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, I mean, action. It was good.
I appreciate that. I love Alien. I love it. And how did that happen? I actually reached out about doing that one, and that's not something I do really.
What?
When I saw the announcement online with everyone else that Marvel had bought the Alien and Predator licenses, and I did the Chuck Liddell raw, it's awesome. I can't wait to see this. I was so stoked. And I reached out to my Marvel Zombies editor right at that moment. I was like, yo, you got to give me an Alien book. I assumed they already had a team in place because they had art. I mean, it wasn't interiors, but they clearly been planning this announcement. And I figured they already had their heaviest hitters on the book. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to get the main book. But they had also done Conan recently. They had spin-off stuff. And I was like, give me something Alien, dude. You don't even know how bad. I kicked in the door with a shotgun. I was like, give me Alien right now. You don't even know what a fan I am. And they did the Homer in the bushes thing, wow, okay, this guy really likes Alien. And I didn't know this, but at the time they had not found a creative team.
Right.
And I didn't know this, but somebody in the office was already kind of pitching for me to get the offer, which I didn't know. So when I got all excited about it, I imagine that helped my case. So when they asked me, they did kind of a bake off, as I understand. I don't know, bake off being like many various people were all pitching at once, which honestly kind of sucks. But I don't know that for sure. I still don't. That's not confirmed. But the way he was talking, the way my editor at the time, Jake, was talking, it sounded like I was not the only guy in the shoot. But I was.
Job.
Thank you. I was ready. I've been.
Please come back.
Oh, dude, yeah. I mean, the third arc is still coming out.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm very, very proud of it.
Yeah, I got to read it. I'm sorry, Philip. I got to read that one.
Dude, no.
I was disappointed because when I found out, I was doing the research, I was like, damn, he writes that too.
No, thanks.
And then James came in the stores like, man, it's so good. The Xeno. I'm just like, okay, I got it. I went to. So yeah.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it's actually, I don't know if they've announced it yet, but I'm actually leaving the book soon. The arc that's coming out now is the third one. So there was Alien Bloodlines, an Alien Revival, and
Right.
now Alien Icarus is coming out, and that's my last one.
Oh, come on, come.
I know, dude. Well, it was 3 good arcs. I don't want to overstay my welcome. Got to leave when people want you to stay.
You're not overstaying your welcome, brother.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
No
But
problem.
I'm still on action for the foreseeable future.
And
There
that
we
is
go.
awesome too. That is
There we
awesome
go.
too, man.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
That's the book they're gonna have to pry out of my dead hands. That book means so much to me, man.
Oh
Oh.
man.
And not that
As
Alien didn't either. And in fact, so honestly, my bandwidth was really getting thin, and I had to let go of a book, and I deeply love Alien. That I hated to let it go, but I was like, I am killing myself. I got to let go of something. So I ended up being, and I had just committed to Bond, to doing the 007 series of Dynamite. It was too soon for me. It would have been a total dick move for me to leave that book.
James Bond is awesome too. It's kicking. I've been reading that as well. It is.
Thank you,
It
man.
is kicking. Trust me. I mean, like, it is really good. You should get your stuff and tell them to put it into a movie. I'm serious.
I'll be
It
like,
is
hey.
really good. I'm not lying to you.
Well, I appreciate that. I hope I wouldn't say no.
Hey, J Mike, what you got, J Mike?
Yeah, I was gonna ask. So you say you're in the Army full time, is that correct? Or
Yeah.
so how do you manage that and writing?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I'm trying it myself, brother. So yeah.
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 Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, Will tell you it's a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
It's you just struggle all the time. That's the answer.
So I guess you know, I'm kind of a night owl myself. So I guess you have some late nights in the quiet hour. Are you one of those quiet hour guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's killing me straight up.
Okay.
So I've got my job, and then
Right.
I spend time with my son and all that, and then I write. And lately I've been going to bed at like 4 or 5 in the morning. It's just like the worst. So I'm getting like a couple hours of sleep. Usually I'll try to grab a nap here. If I can grab an hour someplace else, I will, but it's not always that bad. 4 and 5 is not always as bad as it gets, but lately it's been that bad.
Okay.
So it's a lot. And I let go of the Alien book to help with that. So I like live maybe like closer to my life expectancy. But right after I gave it up, I actually got an offer on another job that I could not turn down.
Okay.
So I'm kind of right back where I was. But honestly, man, I mean, someday I'll be washed up and then I can relax.
Yeah, because
like that.
yeah, because what it is, yeah, you know, you put in the work on the front end, and it's supposed to make life easier on the back end. That's what it is.
Why you got the energy?
It's hard, yeah, but it matters to me. You know, you make time for the things that matter to you. I mean,
Right.
I've already had to give up things that matter to me. Like I hate not fighting. I hate not doing the MMA stuff. It's like I really enjoyed it. And kind of gave me the reason, like fulfillment, like reason to stay fit, besides just doing the tests as well, besides just the ACFT, as we'll talk about as well.
Hey man, well, we could talk about we could talk about doing some high intensity interval training to save you, man. Because hey, all of us on the corners are in our 50s. So
Yes.
so
Damn, guys.
my point in saying all that is you can do some other stuff. It may not be that what is not the fight, but it will surely break you in half so far as physical fitness.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm still doing what I can to stay fit, but it's not.
All right.
I do miss it. I do miss the fighting.
I got you.
There's other stuff, like as far as when people ask me, what do you do for fun? I was like, I don't really have an answer. I mean, I love the things that I do. I love writing. I love being, I do make sure I get time with my son every day, no matter what. Yeah. Like no matter what's going on, he and I will spend a little bit of time together. I read to him before bed, no matter what. So that time is always there. And the writing is always there. Keeping my chops up for my other gig is always there. There's things that I do that I just refuse to give up. And I'm not going to let myself utterly go physically.
I didn't think you would.
But there are things that, you know, the thing that suffers, honestly, that I have to really struggle to make time for is to consume other stories, to consume, like, to make sure I'm current on who's doing the A-game stuff in comics and like the great movies and shows. We're in like a golden age of amazing TV films and stuff. I mean, film, like some of that less so these days because of COVID, but like that aside, there's a ton of amazing content out there like that. I mean, back in the day, I remember growing up, people talk about like, TV, you know, TV is so lame. TV rots your brains. Don't watch TV. As a storyteller, I don't feel that way at all. There's amazing stuff out there, like just that makes me better, you know?
Right.
So I mean, that's the thing that suffers the most from this crazy time crunch I'm constantly in. And I kind of fix it by like multitasking, sort of, like, you know, watching stuff on my Kindle while I'm on the exercise bike, or
right.
like listening to audiobooks in the car while I'm driving to work or back or whatever. I never practice trumpet anymore, not in front of the TV. Or well, in my computer, really. I'm in my office right now. I usually
Right.
practice up here while I'm watching something with subtitles, because otherwise it's just not going to happen. So yeah.
You've answered some really good stuff that was on my list. And thank you, John, because you took some questions off of my list. But hey, I want to talk about this right here, dude.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Thanks for picking that up, Will.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have the originals. I have the comics downstairs, but I got so many daggone boxes downstairs that I couldn't, man, I just can't dig through to find them all. So
Yeah, you and I both.
and I read the first two books and then I was like, I don't have time to just, but I'm reading again. And your script, it is the depth, and in particular with when you go into the song and the prose of the songs and explaining, kind of like adding a little side piece to help explain the story with the songs and just the different prose. Dude, it's Lord of the Rings, it's Dungeons and Dragons, it's Alan Moore-ish, so far as like the Watchmen, just the different side pieces of story that you tell to supplement the graphic pieces of it. Phenomenal, dude. I'm just like, hey, for the audience, go get yourself The Last God. It's not expensive, but it's damn good. So do yourself a favor. And what inspired you? Because it seems to me that D&D helped inspire this. And do you play with your son? I'm shutting up.
I don't really do D&D, but I've always been fascinated by it. When I was a kid, I really wanted to do it, and I just didn't have a crew. I was like out in the country, didn't really have like a group. At one point, I did buy a D&D set, like the Dragonlance one. This is like, I think at the time, I think the current thing was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought the big Dragonlance box, but it wasn't. I thought that it would come. This is like, don't judge me. This is before the internet. At least before it was in my life anyway. And so I bought that stuff, and I thought there would be like, but it was just me in my house. I didn't have a group of people to play with. And I thought there would be adventures like campaigns, like ready to roll in there, and there wasn't. DM has to do all that. So basically I just kind of went through it all and kind of did a big deep dive on the lore and just kind of I used it kind of like a storytelling vehicle, kind of.
Yeah.
But it was really fun, and that was kind of the extent of that, and just like reading the books that were out around that same time. Also the Dragonlance books and the Terry Brooks stuff, the like Sword of Shannara and all those.
Piers Anthony stuff.
C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. I'm sorry, what, Will?
I was thinking Piers Anthony.
I did not read any Piers Anthony. No, I know that name, of course, but I don't know the books.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, I kind of fell in love with fantasy through those kinds of things. Tolkien actually was not one of the first ones that I read. It was actually, I came to Tolkien after some of the others.
Right.
Do you ever read any Anne McCaffrey?
No. Aside from the names that I mentioned, another one that I read real early on, I read Ursula K. Le Guin, the Earthsea stuff. And that was also super, super good. I was very impressed. That made a big impression on me in the depth that she gave them, the rules of magic, and how simple but elegant the rules of magic were in her world, and how it's all about knowing the name of the thing.
Yeah.
I love that it wasn't just like Harry Potter's like swish and flick bullshit. It was like,
yeah,
there's rules,
Well, if you do your dabbling, and I've done my reading in the Golden Dawn and things of nature. It is what you said. There's a science to it. And those sciences they're not easy to swallow.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my exposure to fantasy early on. I really admire it these days. Tolkien is still kind of the king to me as far as the depth and just the way that he's just like the grandfather of any kind of fantasy world building. He just did so much, entire languages, and how his worlds were they all kind of grew out of language. Mine in The Last God, which is now called, also I should mention that it's now under the title The Felspire Chronicles Book 1. there was like some overseas like copyright issue with the name. So now it's that the hardcovers that have printed since then are now called the Felspire Chronicles Book 1, but the cover looks the same otherwise.
Yeah, it's right there, team.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay.
Mine kind of grew out of music. One thing that really struck me from Tolkien's work was how he would put little songs and short stories and things in his larger stories that makes the world feel so much more lived in and real and old. I just love that aspect. And so I did that too. Like that became a kind of the staple of my stuff. So mine, if his work grew out of language, mine kind of grew out of music. And I tried to use those songs to make the feel it became like a really useful shorthand to illustrate how different these different cultures are. Like there's the Elva have their own songs, and the Northmen have theirs, and the people from Tirgalot have theirs, and they all they're different, right?
Yes, sir.
So it all kind of illustrates how different they are. So yeah.
Yeah, yes. It's so good. I'm just trying to tell everybody, and I know some folks who I've had some listeners and viewers who have like, when are you going to get Phillip Kennedy Johnson? Because we've heard you mention him before. And when are you going to get him? I'm like, hey, don't worry about it. He'll get there. But they are excited about your stuff, and so I'm adding more spices to your pot and hyping you up, man.
Oh, thank you, brother, and man, thank you for anyone listening here. Will was amazingly patient getting me on here, so thanks for not blowing me off as bold, because I meant to come on here before I did. So
look here, let me tell you like this. As I said, I try to write, and I try to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and write for an hour every day, and then start my day. So, and that has fallen off the wayside like a son of a gun. So I have complete respect for the quality and the quantity of work that you put out. So I was not tripping about your not replying. So, and one more thing I'm going to say, because I know we got about 11 minutes left before you got to get ready to put your son to bed. And that is, are you originally from Maryland, or you just live in the Maryland area now?
No, I came up here for this job. Yeah.
Okay.
To play with the Army Field Band. Before that, I grew up in, I was a little kid in Iowa and then Kentucky. I went to high school and undergrad in Kentucky, and then lived in Texas for graduate school.
Gotcha.
That's where the farm thing comes from.
Say it again.
Being out in the country.
Yeah.
So that's where that comes from out there. Gotcha.
Yeah. I wrote Warlords of Appalachia, which is kind of my
Yes.
which is kind of about Kentucky. Love letter might be generous, but a letter to and about Kentucky. And I actually do like Kentucky a lot. People there are great, and the Warlords of Appalachia is all about that place. That the premise of that book is it's set after the Second American Civil War, and Kentucky's become an occupied nation within U.S. borders. And that was all about the people in Kentucky and how I see them, and anyway, I digress.
Well, I'm not going to throw you. I'm not going to throw you in as a Maryland, since you're not originally from Maryland. But since you live in Maryland now, in the Maryland area, I'm going to throw you in the great pot.
Yeah, my son is. I try to be.
Maryland writers out there. So for the listening audience, so it's you got Rodney Barnes, you got Tom King, and the last two are both living or from Annapolis, and so we welcome you to the Maryland Crab Pot.
Thank you,
writers.
I appreciate it. It's rarefied air, man. Some good people around here.
Very good. Very good people.
I'm not going to maximize the questions. Did anyone else have questions? As I know John is over there scribbling.
Yeah, well, this is probably off track, or maybe not. I just thought of this writer. Did you ever read any Peter David?
Yeah, well, I mean, I read his comics. Yeah.
Yeah, Will and I used to talk about him back in the day. I'll never forget. I'm like, I'm looking at some Supergirl comics, and I'm like, Peter David is on Supergirl.
Yeah.
So I start reading it. What was that, Will? About the
late 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah, late 90s, early 2000s. So I start reading Supergirl. I was like, oh my God, this stuff is really good. He's got me reading Supergirl. I mean, it was just totally entertaining. And I know there was a Bizarro Supergirl and all this different points that he delved into, but those books were really good. They
Yeah,
used to,
I knew him best through his Hulk work.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
very
read
good
those
book.
too. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I read a lot of that. That's primarily how I know Peter David. I've never actually met him, but yeah, I've
Yeah, I
read
would
good
love
things,
to.
and his Hulk work is terrific.
His so
Yeah.
his run on Captain Marvel run was very good too.
Mm,
Oh, yeah. That was phenomenal. Yeah.
I
Uh,
got, well,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go, James.
Okay. I was wondering, I mean, like, I'm a huge X-Men fan. And I was wondering, have you ever thought about wanting to do a mutant book?
no, I mean, I got a lot of friends in that office right now, but man, I don't know. Honestly, I feel like the people that they've got in there right now, they've got like Leah Williams, Steve Orlando, Vita
Mhm.
Ayala, and I feel like that the X books are such an important, I don't know, not sure how to say this. I'm not sure if my voice on something like X-Men would be the one that would be the voice that matters. You know, like that's always been like the X-Men have always kind of been code for people who see themselves as like the other in American society, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
I mean, what the way
sorry,
you do the way you do action, I mean, the way you've got Superman going on right now, and you've got Metallo and all those guys coming. I mean, you've got so much diversity going on with that. I could see you doing an X-Men book.
well, thank you. I mean, I'd love to, man. I really would. I grew up when I was a kid. If you weren't reading X-Men, you were just human trash. Like everyone had to be reading X-Men, or it didn't make sense.
Man,
I mean,
yeah.
that was the one book that everyone just had to be reading. This is like the 90s. When like Joe Mad was on it, Jim Lee was in there before
Jim
that.
Lee.
Like it's just unbelievable people telling amazing stories that are still kind of out there. Like that was when they were doing like Phalanx Saga and
Mhm.
Even
the
some of the Claremont stuff back in the day.
Generation X. What's that?
Even some of the Claremont stuff from back in the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah,
Wow.
right. Exactly. And God, what else was back then? Age of
On,
Apocalypse.
and
Oh,
Onslaught.
yeah.
Onslaught.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Oh,
great
I
stuff.
love, yeah, Onslaught.
No, I love the
Onslaught.
X-Men. I did try to scratch my X-Men itch in Marvel Zombies Resurrection. There's a lot of X-Men stuff in there.
Yeah.
Very
that
much.
that was practically an X-Men book. So yeah, that's when you see the Phalanx show up, and you see there's a lot of like Forge, and you see the X Mansion, that first issue, or the first issue of the miniseries anyway.
Mhm.
So that was probably the closest I'll get, but maybe. I mean, I've got a lot of friends there, and we, never say never. I'd certainly be
Oh.
happy to.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll tell a little story, and this may wrap it up, Will, and
Okay.
everyone, and James and Philip,
Mhm.
because James, you brought up the X-Men books.
Mhm.
That early run, where it started, Giant Size X-Men 1, then it
Oh,
hit
yeah.
94, 95, 96.
Big time.
I mean,
Big time.
well, I was reading those books in I think I want to say junior high. I remember reading them. Listen to this. So, well, I was always well behaved in school. My dad was a principal, not of my school, but of another school.
Oh, so
So he
you're
did,
well behaved? Is that how that works?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, preacher's kid is a nice one. Is that how it goes?
Yeah.
That's-
My
that-
my
that-
grand my
that's to tell
grandfather
me.
was a preacher too. So, but my dad, yeah, he just didn't tolerate foolishness in school. So anyway, I'm reading the X-Men in school. This was an art class, so I had finished what I was supposed to do, and it was a huge room, and the teacher was called out, some emergency. So I'm reading those books, the X-Men, those early runs, man, the Living Island of Krakoa, all of
right.
that stuff. And so the teacher was called out. I'm reading the X-Men book. So somebody goes over to the sink and wets up a paper towel, and it starts. They start throwing those wet paper balls. I didn't join in on that stuff. I'm like, these kids are crazy. They're here throwing wet paper balls, and I'm reading the X-Men, the greatest book ever written, and they're here throwing paper towels. But that's what it reminded me of. Yeah,
All
boy,
right.
those books were great. Yeah, they were throwing stuff, acting up. Teacher came back. What in the world is going on? I was right there with my X-Men book.
Yeah, I bet teachers wish they were throwing paper towels now. But anyway,
Wait, what's that? Say that
I
again.
said, I bet teachers were just wishing they were kids were throwing paper towels.
Oh,
Uh,
who are you telling, Will?
uh,
That would be the minor
yeah.
compared to what happens today. Yeah, those were innocent times. Yeah.
Very
And
much.
so, hey, the your collaboration on the Dark Crisis piece and get because
Oh,
got a few minutes
awesome.
left. As you tied in the future state and then going into the build up to WarWorld and how that all tied into Dark Crisis. What was that writing table like for all you guys collaborating? And man, you guys did
Yeah.
a phenomenal job. So I'm
Awesome job.
and closing out on this, how you guys did that writing table.
For Dark Crisis?
Yes, sir. And your piece in it, how you were involved in it, even with the WarWorld piece.
Yeah, so okay. As far as, when they were doing Dark Crisis, they grabbed all the Justice League members from wherever they were at that time, and Superman was in WarWorld still. There was it was really complicated because Superman was on WarWorld, and when Dark Crisis started, he had to be in his own costume, right? I guess traditional costume, not the John Carter of Mars thing that we had him in. And so Josh and I had to kind of do some surgery and figure out how we were going to get him in a place where he could be used in Dark Crisis and then back where he came from. So we sorted it out so that he would be taken from Earth while WarWorld was in Earth's orbit. After he had come back, we had to kind of make the timelines make sense kind of after the fact. But as far as the Green Lantern story that I did for Dark Crisis, the person I interacted with, it didn't really require all of us to be talking the whole time, because the only writer that my work kind of crosses over with is Josh. Like Josh had to understand what was going on with Green Lantern, and I had to understand Josh's vision for this whole thing. Because when I was finding out about this Dark Crisis story, this was before the stuff was on shelves, and I didn't know exactly what Josh was doing. So he had to kind of catch me up on what this is. And the most important aspect is when I asked Josh, I was like, okay, is this whole thing an illusion? Is this like For the Man Who Has Everything story, where it's all just a big fantasy in their head?
Right.
Or is it real?
Is it real? Yes.
And he said, it's real. Like it's these universes are universes that Pariah has created. Like they actually exist. It's not all fake. It's not a dream. And that was the most important part. Because I mean, if John Stewart was going to make a fantasy for himself, it would look very different than the world that was created in that story.
It was an awesome book, dude. I
Thank
loved
you.
it.
I appreciate it. I love that character. I've got some stuff, the John Stewart stuff that I had at home, from when I was a kid still, was like some of the earliest John Stewart stuff. And I still see him as like an architect.
Yeah.
And since then, he's been kind of portrayed as just the ex-Marine. And sometimes he can be kind of one note, like the way that he's portrayed is like and I get it. I mean, like if you're doing a team book, or like if you're writing on a cartoon show or something, you kind of have to have shorthand for who everybody is. You can't have these big, long, drawn-out conversations where you get into the deep depths of their personality. It's more like, whatever. I'm Aquaman. I make some kind of a quip about water stuff. Like, oh, it's Superman. He's the happy one. Batman scowls. Wonder Woman tells the truth. Flash is kind of funny and fast. And Green Lantern says something like some military jargon line. And then that's kind of all the John Stewart you get sometimes.
Right.
He was like that in the anime series.
Yeah, and it kind of pisses me off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want it to be better than that, And so anyway, I didn't feel like I knew John that well. So I got with Jeff Thorne, who I know is like a hella fan of John Stewart. Like John Stewart's his guy.
Right.
Mhm.
And so we talked he talked at me very excitedly for like an hour and a half about John Stewart. He told me to talked my ass off about John Stewart, and it was super great. It was really fun to hear his take on John Stewart, because I just wanted to know who he was at his core, where he comes from, what he wants, what he's afraid of, like that stuff that really matters in a person.
Gotcha.
And what I learned about John Stewart from Jeffrey, is that don't think he put it in these words. This is what I end up taking from it, and from what I have read of John, is that Hal Jordan is kind of the dark horse pick. Like he was the person everyone doubts him. It's like, why are you Green Lantern? You're a loser. Like this guy's he's
He is. That's good. Dark horse is a good word.
Yeah. I mean, loser's too strong a word, but he's definitely he's rash. He's like
Loose cannon.
Some loose cannon, exactly. Makes bad
Right.
decisions sometimes. He's not afraid of shit, which is great and all. However, sometimes he make dumb mistakes. And he's rash, you know. But he's just this guy that everyone kind of no one understood why the Ring picked him.
Right.
And then he goes on to become the GOAT, you know.
Mhm.
But John Stewart, however, was the obvious choice. Like John Stewart was born to be Green Lantern. He's a leader of men. He's a great tactician. He's a devastating warrior. He's an architect, you know, like a guy who just builds things. He has a brilliant mind who's only limited by like the limitations of 3D space, you know.
Right.
And now he's got this tool that no longer limits him by 3D space. He can do anything his mind can create.
Mhm.
So he is just like the born Green Lantern.
I know when you look at John Stewart, to me, I think he organized the Green Lantern Corps better than Hal Jordan did. I mean, like when he got up there, I mean, he made Kilowog salute, you know, and he was
Yeah.
he was just a born, you know, like, you know, for a Marine, of course, anyway. And you're like, he's just, you know, he was just, to me, he was more of a natural leader. I mean, don't get me wrong, Hal Jordan, yada, 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 yada. But you know, John Stewart, he was just more, when he commanded the Corps, he got respect. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
He commanded them big time. And you're right about that. He is. Yeah. He was the
Yeah.
most obvious.
And I still love Hal. I legit do. Like there's
Yeah,
I'm,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not,
All of them.
I'm not
You
I'm not
really
throwing
are,
any
all of
shade on
them.
anybody because
No.
I'm kind of
No.
I'm getting kind of twitchy about like making sure I'm not pissing anybody off because everybody writing Green Lantern is interesting because people come at you online a lot because everyone's got their favorite.
They do. I mean, and that's a funny thing about Green Lantern is the fact that it's, I can't say, I won't give it like it's the greatest book of all times, but it surely has, I won't even call it a cult following, but it's got a reliable following,
Yeah.
strong following.
And they have some
Yeah.
good stories along the past too. They really have.
Yes.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Oh
John?
yeah, I was gonna say this is probably another sidebar, but I used to talk to Will about, man, I loved when they had Hal Jordan as the Spectre. I love that too.
That was
It was
cool. Yeah.
good.
Oh man, that thing was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a Spectre guy. I love Spectre. And honestly,
Oh,
Jim
yeah.
Corrigan's my guy for sure. But it was definitely cool to see something different there.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, Will,
Um,
like Spectre.
We all,
Um,
yeah.
There you go.
What was I gonna say?
As
Hal,
in-
yeah,
Hal.
I love how like scrappy Hal is. Like he never gives up. He's just that guy who just kind of fights till he's burger, you know, and he kind of goes on instinct and on his gut.
Yep.
But
Go Peacock.
John's just like this machine, man. I love that
Yeah.
dude. And I really fell in love with that character when I was writing this book.
Mhm.
And I wanted to show more of him, more of who he is. I wanted to show his mom. Like there was some reference to his mom back in the day, like as a civil rights leader that inspired him so much. I want to see her. There's some very like throwaway line about him having a sister, and we don't know anything about her. I wanted to show her. And now that I'm getting to write this miniseries coming up, there's going to be a lot more of that. I'm going to try to tell a John Stewart story that is like a touchstone thing people can turn back to. But like if you know, next time somebody else has to write a John Stewart story, they have something that they can like build on. You know, like
Right.
something
Yeah.
that really defines who John is, and not just like, you know, throw out some military line, but like legit who he is, what he wants, and why he is the way he is. I recently did a couple days of, I taught some writing stuff at West Point kind of recently.
Whoa.
And there's a
Thank
cadet
you.
there. There's a cadet there named Monty Collins, who is super cool, huge comic fan, very talented writer. And he's by far the biggest comic fan in the writing program, probably.
Okay.
And the first time I was there, he had their days are so unbelievably full, man. And this is coming from me. Like their days are full.
Yes, sir.
But so Monty couldn't make it to my official stuff that day. Anything I had going on, he had tests or other things going on all day long. But I was doing this very informal thing to like an extracurricular group, talking about writing with them. And he made it to the tail end of that. He busted ass to get over there before it was over. And I think he brought stuff for me to sign. But either way, I sent him home with some books and we talked. He and I hung out at the end for a good bit. My friend who was driving me around took him back, and we talked. And at some point, I kind of under the table was like, "Yo, look, this is my next thing." And I showed him the cover for that Green Lantern book, and that was not announced yet. And he flipped out. And he was a massive John Stewart fan, and I had no idea. He was making a big fuss over some of my other stuff. But when he found out that I was writing Green Lantern, that was like the red button that like really I had no idea. And he gave me this big like kind of monologue about why he loves John Stewart so much, and not just because he looks like him, even though he does. He told me basically how he's part of something bigger than himself, and it's not just about the Justice League. It's not just about being a superhero. It's about he's a part of the core.
Right.
He's part of something bigger than himself, serving something bigger than himself. And he went on a great length about it. And without realizing what he was saying, he was telling me why Monty was telling me who he is.
Yes, sir.
You know, and why he believes in things that he believes. He's telling me why he's at West Point.
Yeah.
And I will never forget that story. I always associate Monty with Green Lantern, John Stewart. And whenever somebody comes at me, and there's always this stuff online, like, you know, Hal Jordan's the real Green Lantern and everyone else is shit. And like, or John's, people say the same thing about John, like John's the only Green Lantern, or Guy. God. Kyle or whatever.
Of all the ones. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Whenever someone asks me, like, you gonna put Guy in the book? And I'm just like, no. Everyone's got their favorite, and everyone's got their favorite, and that's totally fine, you know. But whenever someone's like, John Stewart's bullshit character, I was like, I just immediately blow that off, because I see Monty. You know, like I have all the proof I need that John Stewart is important, and that he's real to me.
Yeah.
You know, because I met him. So
I'm actually Will knows I'm actually waiting on my John Stewart statue from Sideshow. Have you seen it? I think they've delayed it. They've delayed it by like 6 months now, but
Really?
it's actually supposed to ship next month. But it's really good. I want to say, oh yeah, it's at Sideshow, but it's done by Tweeterhead, by Tweeterhead Studios. But yeah, it's a really nice statue. But yeah,
I don't.
Delay was. You know,
I confess, I don't keep up with the collectibles very much. The only figures I've ever bought, I mean, aside from being like a kid or buying toys for my son, I bought a few copies of the WarWorld Superman one that they did. They did the future state Worlds of War Superman that turned out fucking amazing.
Okay.
With the intention of giving some of those away. So I gave my son one. And I gave.
Have you been on the Sideshow website before?
No, I haven't. This is the only actual like statue that I have.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't want to open up a whole new bug. If you go on that Sideshow website, oh my goodness, I probably won't,
honestly. Like for me, comics are about the stories for me.
Oh, okay, I got you. Okay.
I'm not so much a collector. I know that comics are for readers, but also for collectors. It's like a whole different kind of thing.
Right.
And for me, I have my childhood collection that matters to me a lot. I mean, my dad brought home these old comics. Just to him, they were just trash, to help me learn to read.
Right.
Just to help me learn, English.
Right.
But to me, I just became very fascinated with the medium, the storytelling medium, the joining of language.
That's your area.
So to me, it's about the stories.
That's what got me back into it as well. Go ahead, James.
Well, all right. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, Will.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
I was wondering, Phil, out of all the books, like the books that you're doing now, but if you're reading privately, out of what is your favorite book that you're reading right now? Not yours, but something that you're reading from somebody else. And we may have touched on this, but I forgot. I might have looked over it, but out of all the books that you're reading now that someone else is doing, what is your favorite?
Oh man. I read the Brubaker, Sean Phillip stuff is consistently so great, so compelling. He's doing his Reckless series, their Reckless series.
Okay.
It's a series of like pulp mysteries,
I've got
kind of.
you.
They're like detective novels, basically.
Yeah, because I was just looking at some from the 2016-17 time period when my wife and I met, that Sean and Ed did together. I can't think of the name of the series, but yeah, I've got them all.
God, I've got whatever it is, I got it in this room. It's Criminal is amazing.
Yes.
Was it Criminal?
Yes, sir.
That might have been my first Ed Brubaker book, maybe, question mark. Criminal was just like set the bar. I was like, I don't even know who these people are, but holy crap, is this good? Like I didn't read comics for a while. I got back into it, and that was something that just captivated me. Criminal and then Fatale was great. And Criminal has come and
read
gone.
that.
Criminal, like there was some Criminal stuff, and he did some other stuff. He came back to Criminal again. And now he's doing the Reckless series, which is very much like Criminal in a way. And I just love it. I recently met Sean Phillips. I was in the UK for about a month last fall. And a friend of mine lives in Lancaster over there, and I hung out with him. This is Alex Bachmadel, another writer. And there's a little crew of like comics and animation people that live around there, and sometimes they get together. Andy Diggle is one of them, another writer.
Yeah,
He wrote Constantine back in the day.
Did the Capers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and Sean Phillips came out, and I was like, I've got all your shit, dude. I've got like 40 pounds of your work. And
I know I'm reading the Brubaker Daredevils now. I'm getting back into them, and I have what they call comics that's not nothing that's on TV. Comics I'm reading. So, like when there's really nothing on TV, I have to crack open a comic. And my wife, she laughs at me because I just can't get one book. I have to read the whole series. You know what I'm saying? So,
I've got a bunch of stuff on my bookshelf that I intend to read very soon. I still really admire Scott Snyder's work. I have a lot of the stuff he's been doing.
Right.
And Ice Cream Man is one I go back to a lot. It's a great horror series going on now.
Was that Max something? Max, I can't think of this.
Oh yeah. Maxwell. Crap. I'm not. Yeah. I can't remember.
Yeah. I know what you're talking. Yeah.
Yeah, it is terrific. It's really good. I go back and reread a lot of the Hellboy BPRD stuff a lot, and anything Ed Brubaker writes, sight unseen.
Awesome stuff.
So forgive me. I gotta get down to my son here in a minute.
Yep.
So
I was going to cut it off. I was going to cut it off. Hey, so Philip, thank you so much for joining us. It's an honor. Give your son a hug for us.
I will. Thank you.
And awesome meeting you, dude.
Yeah, man, it's great meeting you guys. And Will, it's a real pleasure to see you again. Please give your daughter my best.
Will do.
Cool. You guys take care.
You
All
too.
right, you take care.